Conklin and Company with 13 ABC Action News anchor Lee Conklin. First with what's happening behind the headlines. And Take 3, our panel of political analysts.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome into another edition of Conklin and Company. Coming up today on the program, the long, cold, record-breaking winter of 2014, and we still have quite a ways to go. We're going to talk salt supplies, road clearing priorities, potholes, and more with representatives from the city of Toledo and ODOT as well. That's coming up a little bit later on in the show. Also, the controversy, let the controversy over the run for Lucas County auditor begin already. That and more in Take 3 with Tom Troy of the Toledo Blade a little bit later. But first, a proposal that's really drawing almost universal praise this week. ProMedica's plan to set up its headquarters downtown Toledo in the historic old Edison Steam Plant, a 119-year-old building. Also parts of the Key Bank next door, the adjacent Key Bank building in downtown Toledo. And you're here to talk about that. Representatives from ProMedica, Barb Peedy, Tim Gronke, and Jim Huffman from Key Bank. Great to have you all in studio this morning to talk about this story that kind of came out of nowhere this past week. So kudos to all of you for keeping it hush-hush. And the announcement comes out that this plan is to bring the headquarters, which is right down the street here on Richards Road, to downtown Toledo. And Barb, kind of take us in to the collaboration with ProMedica and Key Bank.
Sure. Well, I think that goes back, collaboration goes back several years. And when you look at the different buildings that ProMedica has acquired in the last 6 to 10 years even, as the system has expanded, there was a need for additional business offices. So you've got Richards Road, like you mentioned. You've got a couple other buildings that we have business offices in. There are some properties that we rent suites. And obviously that's not as efficient as it could be when you have everyone under one roof or within 2 buildings that are walking distance from each other. So Randy Ostra, who I think his middle name is Collaboration, has been looking for a way to, how do we get everybody under one roof, yes, but how do we also maybe breathe some new life into downtown, which I think is near and dear to everyone's heart who knows this community and understands it. And obviously an influx of 700 jobs is huge for the economic development implications, but it's also very consistent with what Randy has put forth since his tenure of collaborating with different businesses throughout the community. And we've been taking an approach from an advocacy perspective, working on social determinants of health. So what that means is we take our mission outside of our 4 walls. The mission is to improve health and well-being. Well-being is very key. What do we do for the people who aren't in the acute stage of health, but who may need some hands up to get to a better place in life? Hunger as a health issue is something that we've worked extensively on, and we're looking at how we partner with education, working with Toledo Public Schools, even housing. So when you think about putting your arms around an entire community, getting to the heart of it, literally, is a great place for us to call home.
Okay, so you talked about collaboration being the middle name, and Randy Ostra at the center of this, the president and CEO of ProMedica. So take us inside the art of the deal, Jim Huffman. When was this first, I'm going to say, broached? I imagine you and Randy were kind of front and center at this. If you tell us what you can.
Yeah, this came together very quickly, obviously, and I think that's one of the beauties of Toledo is people can get together. They know each other, and the relationships have been built over many years. Randy and I are probably on 3 or 4 boards together, and you work on a lot of community projects. And he called up one day and said, "Hey, would you be willing to sit down and grab breakfast and talk about some things?" And that's pretty easy to say yes to, right? And we got together, and he said, I have this view of pulling all of our properties together into one place, and I'm thinking of downtown as we look around. You're sitting in the middle of a great opportunity. You got the steam plant in your building. Would you ever look at participating with us on that? And I said, well, that's not something we were thinking of. This has been our home for 32 years.
Totally out of left field.
Totally out of left field, but it didn't take you long to say, this is a wonderful opportunity for the community, so how do we help play a role in that? So that would have been in November. So in about 60 days, this all came together. We haven't signed the property over or sold it or anything. What we've signed is just some letters of intent. There's a lot of work still to be done on those. We're going to stay in the building, so figuring out how we coexist and make all that work still has to be worked out. But I know that'll all work out fine. We're both going into it with the same goal of having a win-win for ProMedica, for KeyBank, and the community, and it'll happen.
Yeah, and you mentioned the work to be done. That's where Tim Gronke comes in right now. I think if there's one caveat here, Tim, that people are talking about, it's the parking.
Right.
What are you going to do about the parking? Promenade Park in the midst of a renovation. Nobody wants to see Promenade Park go away. I think most of us who have been here for a few years remember the concerts on the river and the good times there. We want to see those come back as well. So where's parking stand right now? Exactly what will happen?
Sure. Well, with that large number of employees, we have to figure out the parking solution or come up with a solution. And we've looked at what's available downtown, and we wanted to make something that's convenient for the employees as well. So the old Federal Building site seemed to make a lot of sense. One of the things we want to be careful of is if we view ourselves as a catalyst for more development downtown, being careful that we don't take up more available parking for future development downtown. So that's sort of the balance that we have to think about. But that convenient parking is going to be a big issue.
All right, let's talk money now, because I think everybody considers ProMedica, well, second largest employer or largest employer in the city of Toledo, is having these deep pockets, right? All these facilities around the area, but there is a push to get some state money here, some state historic tax credits, and how will that play out going forward as you try to get this done? Barb or Tim or Jim, you can tackle that.
Well, we're still pretty early in the process. I think Jim alluded to that. We still have some work to do, some due diligence, and that's going to be a key part of it, I think, to figure out what are some of those sources that we can tap. The redevelopment of the steam plant, as well as any work that we might do within KeyBank building, is certainly going to take some money, and so we would look for some of these other sources to help with that as well.
All right, and Jim, you've been going down to that building for a long time. And we know about David Ball and Jim Jackson tried to get that building renovated, ran into a bunch of roadblocks. This didn't happen. What would it mean to see that building right next door, adjacent to the KeyBank building, occupied? What would it mean, you think?
Well, that is just a wonderful building. The architecture of that building to me is splendid. Of course, the history of that building is outstanding. I think Barb told me it was 119 years ago or something it was built. So preserving our history and our traditions is really important. That's one of the exciting things about this. There's a new, but there's a preservation of the old. That should be a signature of our waterfront, and it will be when it's all done. What's really nice is, I think when Jim and Dave were trying to redo the steam plant, you had to really question what's the market demand, because if there's demand for it, projects will work. And when there isn't demand and good fundamentals, they didn't go forward. And I think we're lucky that it didn't go forward, because now this is based on such good fundamentals.
Right.
And there should be a spillover. You can't bring that many people down and not expect other good things to happen. And so I think that'll be the next to do for the community, is to come together and figure what else comes of this.
Now, Barb Petey, what are you hearing from community downtown throughout Northwest Ohio as chief advocate of ProMedica?
Sure.
What are you hearing from people now?
Overwhelming positive response. People are delighted, not just because of the 700 jobs that, like Jim just said, that will be coming down, that will spur other businesses to come down. You have to imagine, those 700 people will need places to eat, and recreation after hours, whatnot, keeps more people downtown. But our partners are thrilled with this. One of the things that we have long been looking at is how can we help revitalize all of the community with walking trails, bike trails, those types of things. So when you start talking about the waterfront, and again, the proposed garage is really on the site of the former Federal Building. So this is by no means a plan to take away Promenade Park. And so there is still waterfront property there. To have health fairs, perhaps on the river, and to start linking those businesses that dot the waterfront. Our partners have been very, very supportive of this, as have our employees as well. I think people see the efficiencies that are gained.
I read in the newspaper, in the Toledo Blade, Tim, that there's a tight timetable here, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant. It was kind of a vague statement. What kind of timetable are we looking at to make this happen?
Well, I think the overall plan is going to be a couple of years, quite honestly, between the design and the construction process. But certainly on the front end, there's going to be a lot of work, I think, on the tax credit side and the parking decision. Those, I think, are the things that will have to probably happen fairly quickly to give us enough time to then get the design and construction work done.
But 2 years, even 2 years is quick
Aggressive.
to do something. It's very
Yes, it
aggressive
is.
to do something like this. So we wish you all the best of luck. I think everybody's excited about this.
I think so.
I mean, you go around Toledo, you can find quite a few naysayers. But with this, I think, difficult to find.
Right.
Yes.
Really,
Yeah.
really. So best of luck going forward. We
Thank
appreciate
you so
coming
much.
in.
Thanks for having
All right,
us.
Barb Peaty, Tim Gronke, Jim Hoffman, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We're going to come back on Conklin and Company in just a minute and talk about those road conditions as we try to slog through the long cold winter of 2014. We're back in just a moment.